Hey there, Grumpy Old Fart here. This is a compilation video of some of my greatest hits. Hope y'all enjoy them.
People are getting video of what appears to be beings or creatures which cannot be seen on the camera or on the video. It's a shimmering shape or some kind of a translucent shadow. It can be seen moving through the bushes. You know, as it goes by, it pushes the branch aside, and the branch comes back when it's done. Shit like that. I thought this was kind of weird, so I did a little bit of research. There are three major, I guess, reporting people. I don't know how you pronounce it. Witnesses, experiencers. I don't know. But there's three major ones and several minor ones. The ones that I could verify. There was five. Okay, the three major ones and two minor ones. The five events I'm aware of took place in Washington State, Northern California, West Virginia, Alabama, and Saskatchewan, Canada. Each of these events was caught on video. They were people looking for evidence of Bigfoot, whether he exists or not. I'm not getting into that, but they caught this on video. They captured these bizarre instances of creatures moving through the woods, moving branches, and you can see them in the grass and like that as they walk around. They were not physically visible. In two of the videos, there are shimmering outlines of humanoid shapes. In one of the others, there's what looks like a smoky grayish mist. I don't know how else to describe it. It's in the shape of a humanoid. The last two involve a clear video of some invisible being moving through the brush in a straight line. So, branches moving as it goes through, but there's nothing there. There's literally nothing. There's no shimmering, there's no mist, there's no nothing. Now, when I was doing the research in this, I kind of go into these things with the eye of a skeptic. The skeptic in me says that all of these videos can easily be faked, and they can. Let's not mince words. They can easily be faked. However, three of these Bigfoot researchers that are reporting this, the three main ones, two of them are doctors and one of them is a lawyer. They have private practices. One of the doctors and the lawyer signed affidavits about their experiences. They have been very public and their careers have suffered. And during this one, their careers suffered, meaning they lose business, they're not getting cases, they're being taken off of court cases, things like that. They haven't changed their stories. Their stories still remain the same. So they're sticking by their stories regardless of this. If this is a hoax, these hoaxes have been very, very costly. And I'm not saying this is real. I can't prove one way or the other. I'm saying if this is a hoax, they're hurting themselves by doing it. What are these things? We don't know. If these videos are believed and if they're real, what are they? An invisible thing walking through the woods? I watched one of David Paulides' things. I want to say it was the Hunter video, but don't quote me. 911 Hunters. And they talked about an invisible thing up in the trees, kind of like the Predator from the movie. What are these things? Are they aliens? Extra-dimensional visitors? Can Bigfoot become invisible? That would explain a lot, but I'm just saying. Nobody knows. Nobody knows anything about this. There's no trail of evidence to follow because they don't leave evidence. All we've got is these grainy, sketchy videos. That's it. Now, again, these could easily be faked. And if they are, the people faking them are stupid because they're losing money. Their businesses are hurting by making these claims. If they're real, maybe we need to do some more investigation because invisible predators in the woods, the alchemy. There's a lot of people who think alchemy is just primitive chemistry. It is, but it is also so much more than that. For those of you who don't know, alchemy is the precursor to modern science and chemistry, and maybe a little bit of mysticism thrown in, here and there. The origin of the word alchemy is unknown. Some believe its origin is the Egyptian word chem, meaning the rich, fertile mud of the Nile. Others believe its origin is the Greek word chema, which means to pour or to cast. regardless of where the word originated, the word is there, the science is there, the practice of alchemy has been out there for a couple thousand years or so. Alchemy was invented in the early years of AD, meaning about 2,000 years ago, in northern Egypt. Alchemy is thousands of years old. First alchemist was named Zosimos of, I'm going to try to get his name right, Zosimos of Panopolis. He was the first to define the mysterious and legendary substance, Philosopher's Stone, which makes many of the alchemical goals possible. Transmutation, immortality, that kind of thing. Alchemy became a secret art during the Middle Ages, while alchemists of the Islamic world practiced openly and extensively. So people in the Western world, not so much. Let me rephrase that. It was practiced, but it was generally kept secret and only for a select few. Later, European alchemists learned from their Middle Eastern counterparts. Rich nobles had court alchemists. Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph II in 1580 had over 200 alchemists working for him. Many alchemists were tortured for their secrets. Many more fled for their lives. One of the goals of alchemy was to be able to transmute base metals into gold. So, yeah, most nobles. There's an old saying. Every civilization in history goes by the golden rule, and it's not do unto others. It's he who has the gold makes the rules. Well, if everybody can make gold, gold becomes worthless, and that's a power base for most rulers. So, being able to transmute the base elements, the ruling nobles wanted that, but they didn't want anybody else to have it. So, knowing how to do that is great. Sharing it, not so much. In modern times, physicists have succeeded in transmuting tiny quantities of base metals into gold. I didn't know that until I was researching this video. This is only one of the goals of classic alchemy. Others include immortality, divine wisdom, and how to create life. I've done technophobe videos recently on living robots, tiny biological robots, creating life. They're doing that now, and it's freaking scary. Cloning, for example. Historically, there have been many famous alchemists. Roger Bacon was a 13th century friar who was considered the greatest scientist of his time. He created gunpowder as opposed to black powder. He was sentenced to life in prison for heresy in 1284. Nicholas Flamel was a 14th century Parisian scrivener. He claimed to be able to turn mercury into gold. Let me rephrase that. He actually said he did it on January 17th, 1382. Can't read my own writing. Before he died, now keep in mind, everybody kind of scoffed. Yeah, whatever. What the hell is this little scrivener doing? He can't do anything, right? A scrivener is a scribe, by the way. He writes things. He's a writer. He makes copies of written word. That kind of thing. He's a scribe. And then, of course, before he died, he left massive amounts of gold to 14 hospitals, 3 chapels, and 7 churches. He and his wife left all this money to charities, all in gold. Where did a scribe, get that much gold? You see what I'm saying? And another point to this, he and his wife were seen alive and well for centuries after their death. So, maybe he did transmutation immortality. Who knows? Another man, Theophrastus Bombastus von Hohenheim. I hope I'm saying his name right. He was also called Paracelsus. Paracelsus used alchemy to heal the sick and diseased. So he was doing good with it. He wanted to be a doctor, basically. He determined that this is the guy that determined black lung was caused by miners inhaling mineral dust in mines. Everybody else thought it was evil spirits or whatever. Paracelsus claimed to have created a human life in a test tube called a homunculus, which he later destroyed because he felt it was wrong to create a life without a soul. So, and he didn't hide it, he made it public. Other alchemists used his formula, claimed to have used his formula, and created their own homunculus. One of the most famous scientists in history was later found to have been an alchemist on the side, Sir Isaac Newton. Regardless of the rumors and the legends, which may or may not be true, certain successes in alchemy have been recorded in abundance. Many modern scientific disciplines have their roots in alchemy. So while we can scoff at what they attempted or what they claim to have achieved, you cannot scoff at the results that we know for a fact they did achieve. Highway phantoms, and sounds kind of weird. And if it happened in one or two states, or in a cluster of states over in one corner of the nation, or whatever, or just in one nation, it would be an isolated thing, and I wouldn't have really messed with it. But this thing is everywhere. I've lived in multiple states all across the nation, and no matter where you go, each and every state has their own highway phantom stories, whether it's a hitchhiker or a person giving you a ride or whatever. This is all over the world. It's not just in the U.S. It's all over the world. In New Mexico, I've heard stories of a hitchhiker on lonely roads out in the middle of nowhere. The hitchhiker asked to be dropped off at a local cemetery. Later on, locals explained that the hitchhiker died decades before. This is all over New Mexico. In Alaska, the story goes that if you break down, you may be offered a ride by a mysterious truck driver. Said driver is the ghost of a trucker who died in a remote area. I want to say, depending on which story you listen to, he froze to death, or he went off the road and got killed in a crash, whatever. In North Carolina, folks tell the tale of a state cop patrolling the swamp and giving rides to stranded motorists, except that this particular law enforcement officer drowned in the swamp decades earlier. They're all over. They're everywhere. Okay? Every state has these stories. And it's not just America. It's in Canada, it's Mexico, South America, and sometimes it's not somebody giving you a ride, but somebody giving you help. They'll stop and help, give you, change your tire for you, or whatever. I heard a story in Peru where a guy with a donkey stopped and helped some people whose wagon had broken axle, and he kind of got it fixed up where they could get into town, and then they find out that this guy had fallen off the side of the mountain decades before. So it's everywhere. It's not just in America. These stories and others like them permeate our nation and the entire world. Each state has them, and no matter where you go, there are first-hand accounts attesting to their veracity. Someone you meet has experienced them. Okay? And so they're pretty prevalent. This is kind of a funny thing. I was doing research for this, and a music video popped up. And I remember hearing this song years ago, and it's one of my favorites. The late, great Red Sovine released a song in 1967 titled Phantom 309. If you've not heard it, go listen to it. It's a pretty good song. It's kind of a ballad. The song tells the story of a hitchhiker stuck on a crossroads in a storm. And he's picked up by a truck driver in a big rig named Phantom 309. The truck driver's name, Big Joe. That's who he is. Later, when the trucker drops him off at a truck stop, he tosses him a dime and says, "Have a cup on Big Joe." So he goes inside, and he gets that cup of coffee and comments that Big Joe had set him up. The waiter explains that Big Joe was a legend. Everybody knows him. Every now and then, he dropped someone off at the diner, where he picked him up off the road. Now, about 10 years before, Big Joe had the choice of hitting a school bus full of kids that was crossing the road, or turning his wheel. And he died, essentially this truck driver died saving that bunch of kids. As I understand it, I did a little bit of research. As I understand it, there's a story out there that the song was written by a man named Tommy Faile, Faile. I hope I'm saying his name right because he deserves it. It's a great song. And this Tommy Faile apparently wrote this from his own personal experiences. So it's in folklore, it's in music, it's everywhere. If it was only, like I said, if it was only 1, 2, or 3 states, or a few states here, or in one section, you could kind of dismiss it. But this is literally all over the world. If it was the crazy old crackpot down the road or the druggie next door telling you these tales, we could dismiss these stories. But they're everywhere, and they're being told by credible and rational people, and people believe them. On hauntings. Now, I realize that many people, and many of you, don't believe in ghosts or spirits. Believe me, I completely understand. I'm not telling you I completely believe every ghost story or tale, but hauntings, spirits, demons, and blah 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 blah. I'm not saying that I believe all of that, but there are some things that I do believe. Here's what I do believe. I believe that human beings and some other living beings have souls. These souls are either matter or energy, and since nothing can ever be destroyed, just the form is changed, then that means that these souls have to go somewhere when we die. I'm a Christian, so I believe good souls go to heaven, while evil souls go to hell. I would imagine that somewhere along the way, some souls could get lost or confused. I can even see some plane of existence, I can even see some evil souls refusing to leave this plane of existence because they know that when they do go, they will reside in hell for all eternity. If you're going to go to hell, you'd fight kicking and screaming before they shove you through that door, wouldn't you? Just saying. Souls that for whatever reason have not crossed over have to be somewhere. As I understand it, most spirits tend to reside either in areas where they are familiar with, like their homes, their places of business, places that they died, etc., or with people that they know. Either way, most ghosts are associated with the place they are seen frequenting or with the person who sees them. I don't know how much of this stuff that I believe. I don't know. I'm not trying to convince you one way or the other. I'm saying that there are so many reports of these all around the world for forever that there might actually be something to it. Ghosts are even mentioned in the Bible. I have seen things that defy explanation. Check out my video, My Paranormal Experiences. My wife's family, very attuned to the spirit world for whatever reason, and I believe what they tell me. They see things that they can't explain, and I believe them. They're pretty grounded. They're pretty, down to earth. Ghost stories are so prevalent in our modern world that it's hard to find any place, a building, a site, or whatever, that doesn't have some kind of paranormal story. Many, many have more than one. Most of the time, as I understand it, spirits are unable to affect the living except for scaring the bejesus out of the people who happen to see them. Little minor things like cold spots, things like that. Sometimes, however, particularly evil souls of violent people are prone to throw stuff around or push people or trip them. Some even scratch or hurt the living. I have seen video of scratches spontaneously appearing on people's skin. There have been numerous reports of people getting ready to go down a flight of steps and they feel somebody push them from behind. Those stories are prevalent everywhere. There's a television series that my wife and I really enjoy called The Dead Files. Really good show if you get a chance to watch it. Great TV series. In that, these spirits affect the health of the living. They can give them diseases and medical disorders and things like that. I can't explain it. It could all be natural, it could all be bullshit. I don't know. My contention is there's so many reports of the paranormal. I did another video called Paranormal Assaults. Check that one out. Demonic Activity. I did that video. Go check that out. My contention is that there are so many reports of these. At some point, we're going to have to start taking them seriously. And if 99.9% of them are bullshit, that leaves 0.01% that are real. And if they're real, that's still, as many of them that are reported, 0.01% is still a hell of a lot. That's all I'm saying. Any way you want to look at it, hauntings can be serious and may require some professional help. There are professionals out there, and I'm not talking about the ghost hunters on Channel 7 or whatever the fuck it is. I'm talking about college parapsychologists. Seriously trained people. People who can help you deal with whatever is going on. And again, it may just be you misunderstanding something. I'm not saying you're lying or anything like that. I'm not saying it's a hoax. But there are some things apparently that can be misconstrued. You could be misunderstanding the situation. Now, that being said, a lot of the stuff that is reported with ghosts, it's pretty hard to misconstrue that. So, you know, my contention is if you are having issues, seek some professional help, because there's people out there that will help you. There's people out there that their job is to help you, and they enjoy helping you. Any way you want to look at it, hauntings are prevalent in our world today. They've been going on for literally for thousands of years, and if it's a hoax, it's one hell of a hoax. So, exorcisms. For those of you who don't know, exorcisms are rituals designed to expel evil forces and demonic entities. Now, I did videos on demonic activity and paranormal stuff. Go check those out. Exorcisms have been around as long as religion has. Exorcisms were performed in ancient Mesopotamia. Many people equate exorcisms solely to the realm of the Catholic Church, and that is not correct. In fact, exorcisms of various types exist in just about every religion around the world. Natives on South Pacific Islands who've never heard of Christianity have rituals for dispelling evil spirits. It's literally every religion. So, excuse me. Around the world, exorcisms are on the rise. The number of requests across our nation alone exceed tens of thousands each year. That number is increasing around the world. Recent polls suggest that roughly half of all Americans believe that demonic possession is real. The Catholic Church alone has at least 10 official exorcists around the U.S. Other denominations have at least 500 combined. Italy has over 200. Spain has at least 37. Catholic priests in Italy, as a matter of fact, complain that they are severely overworked in this area. They say they have far too many possessed people lined up, and they are receiving little support from their bishops. So apparently there's some sort of a conflict in the Catholic Church over this. And I can understand why. Because a botched exorcism can make the church look bad. And, you know, it shouldn't fall to that, but I understand why it does. You know what I'm saying? Exorcists say that the vast majority of people requesting exorcisms suffer from schizophrenia and or dissociative disorders. They also say that 80% of these cases involve sexual abuse survivors. Essentially, nearly all of the people requesting exorcisms do not suffer from any evil spirits or from any form of demonic possession. However, the sheer number of cases across the world means that even though the percentage of actual exorcism cases is extremely low, the number of exorcisms performed is alarmingly and surprisingly high. There's a lot of them. Even when you discount the 90% or whatever that's mental disorders and things like that, there's still a lot left over, just because there's so many of them. And of the exorcisms that are performed, a high percentage of them produce positive results. That's the part that I find interesting. It's one thing to say, well, this person is their life is crap and blah 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 blah. They get an exorcism performed and then everything changes. I mean, you cannot discount that. Period. Now, let me get something to drink right quick. Okay. I realize that in today's modern and rational world, the entire concept of religion has been called into question. I understand that. This is naturally calls into question the validity of exorcisms. I understand people's misgivings. What I tell people is it's all about faith. Period. You either have it or you don't. I can't give you faith. You have to find it all on your own. And it's an individual thing. Consider this, though. Real or not, most of the people who undergo these rituals arrive at positive conclusions. Does it matter if the rituals are based in fact or not? The people are better because of the ritual. Even if it's a psychosomatic thing, they're better. These exorcists are helping people. To the naysayers, I pose 2 points. First, these naysayers, they're either right or wrong. If they're right, how does my faith hurt anyone in any way? If they're correct, none of it matters, and all the people who have faith in God are wasting their time, but they're still doing positive things. They're living better lives for their faith, or at least mostly. On top of that, how does their faith hurt anyone who doesn't believe? You can argue back in the day where missionaries went and tried to force conversions and things. You can't force a conversion. You can't do it. In our modern world, it doesn't happen. Hundreds of years ago, maybe, but not now. If these people are wrong, if these people are correct, then I'm wasting my time, but my wasting time does not hurt anyone else in any way. Correct? If these naysayers are wrong, then the downside is all on them. If God does exist and religion is real, these exorcisms are real, then the naysayers, they're in some deep kimchi. They've got some serious issues to contend with. Because I know what my religion says. I'm not going to force it down somebody's throat, but I know what it says. And if I'm right and the naysayers are wrong, they better have a come to Jesus moment. That's all I'm saying. I'll leave it at that. Secondly, if the devil does exist, he's a well-known manipulator. They literally call him the great deceiver. His most insidious deception was to convince man that he does not exist. Which means the naysayers have bought into the deception, lock, stock, and barrel. You see what I'm saying? If the devil does exist, his greatest trick was to convince the world that he doesn't exist. Well, that means the naysayers have been convinced. Any way you want to look at it, religion doesn't hurt, and being a naysayer pragmatically only hurts yourself. Again, I'm not trying to push religion down people's throats. That's not what this video is about. What I'm saying is, when people are having problems that nobody else, medical science or nobody else, can figure out, then they go to these exorcists, and these exorcists perform their ritual, and these people's lives are better. How does that hurt anyone? Magic. First off, let me preface this by saying that I personally have never experienced anything that I would attribute to magic. So I am not a quote-unquote believer. But I don't discount it, and there's a reason. Most people scoff when you talk about magic, but I've seen those same people refuse to walk under a ladder. They change direction when a black cat crosses their path, and they refuse to step on cracks in the sidewalk. All of these are superstitions stemming from a belief in unseen forces. As a Christian, I believe everything that is in the Bible. When Moses went to Egypt to free the Jewish slaves, he had a confrontation with the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh's wizards threw their staves on the ground and used their magic to turn them into serpents. Aaron was there with Moses, and he tossed his rod on the ground. Through the power of God, his rod also became a serpent. Aaron's serpent devoured the wizard's serpents, proving that God's power was greater than the wizard's magic. However, those wizards turned their staves into snakes. I'm sorry, but that is real magic. Therefore, at one time at least, magic did exist. My personal feeling is that magic is real. It's in the Bible, therefore it is real. The problem is that very few people today know how to work magic to that degree. And that is probably a good thing. There are many unexplained phenomena in our world associated with magic. Some of these are pyramids, ley lines, triangles, demonic activity, psychic powers. I've done videos on these and others. Go check them out. In our modern world, there are many groups who claim to be able to work magic. These include Wiccans, pagans, voodoo practitioners, and Santeria practitioners, and others. To the best of my knowledge, none of these groups, however, produced magical effects to the extent that it could be proven. But that doesn't mean they are frauds. Many people over the years have claimed to be wizards, sorcerers, or witches. Some of them have achieved a degree of fame, or infamy, depending on who they were. Some of these include Hugh Draper, Dion Fortune, Aleister Crowley, John Dee, Gerald Gardner, Anton LaVey, Chaim Samuel Jacob Falk, Eliphas Levi, Helena Blavatsky, Abe no Sime. Yeah. Abe no Sime. S-E-I-M-E-I. Sime. I'm butchering these names, and I apologize. Everybody deserves to have their name said right, no matter who they are. And I'm butchering it, and I apologize. Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa von Nettesheim. Grigory Rasputin. Israel Regarde. Gerard Nkuse Papus, P-A-P-U-S. Edward Talbot. Theophrastus von Hohenheim, also known as Pericles. Cora L.V. Scott. Nicholas Flamel. Some of these were pretty evil people. I'm not saying they weren't. There are others, but researching these will give you an idea of what I'm talking about. And of course, what wizard doesn't have a spell book? Over the years, many such books came to prominence. Some of these include Galdra Bach, the Book of Saint Cyprian, the Black Pullet, Petit Albert, the Magus, the Greek Magical Papyri, the Lesser Key of Solomon, the Key of Solomon, Simon Necronomicon, Pseudomonarchia Daemonum, and the Book of Shadows. And yes, all those are real books. They exist. For good or bad, they're there. Again, I must reiterate that I have never experienced anything that I could attribute to magic of any kind. Anyone who claimed to be able to work magic would be hard-pressed to convince me of it. I believe that magic is real, as I said, because it is in the Bible. However, I would hazard a guess that the knowledge and skills to work that magic have been long lost. But do your own research. Research in the names and the books I've mentioned. If you've had a mystical or magical effect in your life, please put it in the comments. I'm sure people would love to read about it. And if you want my advice, stay right with God. A little prayer goes a long way. Ancient surgeons. Okay, man has been on Earth for a long, long time. Man is inherently a violent species. Given the fact that every other creature on the planet that is equal to or bigger than in size than we are has built-in weapons like claws and fangs, we have to be more of that. Because we don't have any of those. We don't have built-in claws and fangs. We kind of needed to be violent in order to survive. Man needed to figure out a way to survive because we are essentially mobile Happy Meals. Man became violent and vicious, period. That's what we did. Stands to reason that when an ancient man fought, sometimes he got injured. Men fought animals, either in defense or for food. Men fought other men over territory and God knows what else. Injuries would be fairly common. How those injuries were treated is astonishing. Broken bones and lost limbs were generally crippling. Internal injuries were usually fatal. Head injuries were also usually fatal. Eventually, man started practicing medicine. We all know that ancient Egyptians, Romans, and of course the Greeks were practicing medicine, and their discoveries were the basis for modern medicine. These primitive doctors were practicing neurosurgery and spinal surgery 1,000 years before Christ walked the earth. What is amazing is that skeletal remains show that Neolithic man was practicing medicine 6,500 years before Christ. These people were primitive hunter-gatherers who were just domesticating animals. They were also performing complex surgeries, including brain surgery, with significant success. Skeletal remains show signs of healing, which means the patient survived. Estimates are as high as 70% of them survived. That is astounding for people of the late Stone Age, early Bronze Age. How did these primitive men get the skill and knowledge to perform these precise and complex surgeries? There were obviously no medical schools, so were these surgeons just gifted natural adepts? I'm sorry, but brain surgery is a bit advanced for what amounts to not much more than cavemen. I don't profess to know everything. I can't tell you. You can fill volumes with what I don't know. But I know this. When primitive man like that was practicing brain surgery and the people were surviving, that is something we need to find out about. And right now, I don't see anybody investigating that. How did they know this stuff? How did they know to do this stuff? It's one thing to say, Fred got conked in the head when he was trying to kill that mammoth. He's got this big bulge. We need to do something about that. I understand that. But this wasn't draining. This is where they're cutting holes in the skull in a perfect circular shape, doing surgery, and the patient survived. They didn't have hospitals. They didn't have, neurological wards. There were no doctors per se. These people knew something that we need to find out what the hell they knew. That's all I'm saying. And nobody's investigating it. Nobody's trying to find out why. Now, obviously we can't go back in time and ask them. But there's got to be something we can look at. There's got to be some record somewhere. I don't think primitive man wrote stuff down. However, early records should show something. Modern scientists, as far as I know, are not looking into that. And they should be. I think part of this goes to they're afraid of what they'll find. The modern history of man on this planet has been skewed. People are ignoring information that doesn't fit what they believe they know. That being said, I think this fits into that. Because if... excuse me. Sorry. I think that if they find out something that doesn't fit their paradigm, it'll unravel everything they've been teaching for the last century or more. So that being said, they're not willing to look into it. And any way you want to look at it, we need to know. Because our past determines who we are as a people. On the Hound of Mons, and I'd never heard of this before, found an article on it the other day. World War I was the catalyst for levels of violence between human beings that hadn't been seen to date. World War I was supposed to be the Great War, the war to end all world wars. World War I saw the first mass use of modern machine guns. Bad weather and influenza combined to kill off combatants almost as fast as the machine guns did. Excuse me. Amidst all of this horror, British troops were visited by a different kind of horror. In 1914, German troops occupied Mons, and the British valiantly marched to take it back. The British were outnumbered, but determined. Their assault was successful, but extremely costly. The muddy and bloody trench warfare took its toll, and eventually both sides dug in and held the line. Between the two sides, of course, lay no man's land between the trenches. Look that up in history, you'll see what I mean. Here's where the story gets strange. Military tactical doctrine demands that patrols be sent out periodically to determine where the enemy is and to prevent an enemy buildup for an attack. That's just common sense. One night, a 5-man British patrol went out into no man's land, and it did not return. When the bodies were recovered, the fatal wounds were strange. They were not bullet wounds or knife wounds, as would be expected. Instead, all 5 men had been bitten in the throat by some horrid beast. It was like their throats were ripped out. It was like a dog bite, but much larger. Their throats were literally ripped out. Now, a dog killing one of 5 armed men, I could understand. Dogs were often used in World War I to carry equipment and ammunition, and they were also used as guard dogs, so I get that part. That part is easily explainable. But one dog or a group of dogs, possibly a pack, that kills a party of armed men who never get off a shot. That's a little hard to swallow. You know what I mean? After that first incident, many more British men would be found in no man's land with their throats ripped out and horrible bite marks to their bodies. Often in the night, monstrous howls would be heard echoing across the area. For 2 years, the Hound of the Mons prowled no man's land, butchering British soldiers and terrifying the troops. Then, as suddenly as it started, the attack stopped. Very few witnesses saw the beast, and all of them reported a huge black hound. The victims were all trained soldiers, armed for war, and nobody got a shot at it. There are no records of anybody shooting at this thing. Now, here's where it takes an even weirder turn. Yeah, and I do not buy into this. Please don't think I buy into it. I'm putting it in here because it's part of the story. Okay. In 1919, a Canadian veteran named F.J. Newhouse wrote a book wherein he claimed that the hound wasn't a hellhound or a phantom. Instead, he proposed a different origin for the beast. He claimed that a German scientist named Dr. Gottlieb Hochmuller had been experimenting with wolfhounds. He created a huge specimen through selective breeding. Then he traveled Germany, scouring the insane asylums, looking for a proper specimen of man. He found a man who had gone mad in his hatred for England. Then, with the consent of the German government,
he extracted the brain from the man and inserted it into the wolfhound. The man died, of course, but the wolfhound grew powerful and notorious. The hound was then set free to hunt British troops at Mons. Now, nobody can say for sure if Newhouse had real information, of the hound's origin, or if he just made it all up. However, he claimed that papers from Hochmuller's house could prove what he said. Those papers never materialized, so we don't know. And personally, I think that's a little horseshit. But the fact that dozens of trained, armed soldiers were killed by a wolfhound with none of them ever getting a shot off makes a thinking man wonder. I doubt the Newhouse story, but those men died. That is a fact. What kind of animal could kill them with none of them getting a shot off? And most of them were in groups. It's not. It didn't hunt individuals. It hunted groups of men. These are trained soldiers in a wartime setting, wartime footing, and none of them got a shot off. Not once. I'm sorry, that's crazy. There's something to this story. I seriously doubt the Newhouse explanation in his book, but there's definitely something to the story because people died because of this big dog. I don't know if it was a trained attack dog or what, but there was definitely something at Mons. So, Star Children. Now, I did a video a while back about human-alien hybrids. Go and check that video out before you watch this one. I hesitated doing this video because I wasn't sure exactly what star children were. I've done some research, and as far as I can tell, there are as many definitions for star children as there are stars in the night sky. I've heard that they are highly evolved humans, extra-dimensional travelers, human-alien hybrids, humans who have been genetically manipulated by aliens, descendants of wizards of old, descendants of mystical creatures like dragons or Pegasi or unicorns. I've heard they're mutants, espers, gifted humans, gods, descendants of gods, descendants of druids, descendants of the Roman oracles, augurs, seers, prophets, Sibyls, 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 I guess, sortilegi, 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 shamans, human cryptid hybrids, human elf hybrids, and God only knows what else. There's as many. Everybody out there has a different definition for this. What this boils down to is that everyone has a different idea as to exactly what star children are. When there are so many different definitions, it begs the question, does anyone actually know? When everyone has a different definition, is there a definition at all? You know what I mean? Here's what we do know about star children. Evidently, there are people in the world with exceptional abilities. Some have high IQs, some are precognitive, some are clairvoyant, some are mediums, some are telepathic, some are extraordinarily persuasive, and the list goes on and on. Rarely are these abilities physical. The vast majority are mental and spiritual or social. That's about it. Now, a dose of reality. Do these people exist? Maybe. I did a video on superhumans. Many of them fit the description. I did a video on superhumans, and many of them fit the description. The descriptions I just listed above. The people I talked about in that video are indeed real. Their abilities have been tested and verified. Are they star children? I can't say, but they certainly fit the description. I did a video on remote viewing. That is a verified and measurable ability. As I understand it, anyone can do it, but each person has varying degrees of the ability so that some do it better than others. I saw a TV program where an actor and his sons did it successfully. Are they star children? Who knows? The actor certainly has had his share of weirdness over the years. Now, I have never known anyone who has ever successfully done remote viewing. I want to make that clear. My wife and son seem to have the innate ability to see spirits. They aren't mediums per se, but they do seem to be attuned to the spirit world. Check out my video, My Paranormal Experiences. Did I marry a star child? My lovely wife is beyond exceptional, to be sure. So maybe. I don't know. There have been dozens of tests and studies conducted by reputable scientists over the years that were aimed at proving or disproving the existence of extrasensory perception or other psychic abilities. Some prove they did exist and others prove they did not exist. The science on ESP and psychic abilities is definitely not settled. Psychics have been used in criminal investigations with an alarming degree of success. Are these psychics all star children? Possibly. Who knows? Look, I realize I'm pretty well straddling the fence on this topic, and I freely admit that. But from my point of view, there's simply too much information out there to sift through in order to make a rational and informed opinion. I'm not trying to dodge the question. I simply cannot form a rational opinion to answer with. I will say this. Given the fact that the U.S. military and the U.S. government have both admitted that the UFOs are indeed real, that gives a lot of credence to all of these people who claim to have been alien abductees. That being said, many of these alleged abductees have told similar stories of being used as, for lack of a better term, breeding stock for some kind of alien hybrid program. If these abductees are to be believed, and there are too many of them telling the same stories from all over the world, then I would tend to put star children into one of four categories. First, maybe they're alien human hybrids. Second, maybe they're humans who have been genetically modified by aliens. Third, maybe they're highly evolved humans. And fourth, they could be mutants. I include the last two simply because the variety of humans and the variety of life on this planet is such that you simply cannot discount nature and evolution. If aliens are involved somehow, then they are, in my opinion, the likely cause for the entire phenomena of star children. If star children do exist, then I would tend to believe aliens are somehow responsible. On thoughtography. Yeah, I'd never heard of this before. And then I saw an article on it the other day. Actually, I was watching a video, I think, and it mentioned it. So I looked it up, and it's an actual real thing. So here we go. I've done videos on psychic abilities and on superhumans. Go and find those videos and check them out. Thoughtography is also called projected thermography, nenography, nensha, and psychic photography, depending on where in the world you're discussing it. This is the ability to imprint images from one's own mind onto surfaces, most commonly photographic film. The term thoughtography was coined in 1913. And that's what's generally associated with it. A lot of people use psychic photography as well, so keep that in mind. In the early 1900s, approximately 1910, let me get his name right here, Tomokichi Fukurai, F-U-K-U-R-A-I, Fukurai. He's an assistant professor of psychology at Tokyo University. I hope I said his name right. He published results of experiments with Chizuko Mifune and others who could telepathically imprint images on photoplates, which he called nensha. Not ninja, nensha, N-E-N-S-H-A. In the early 1960s, Chicago resident Ted Sirios, a hotel bellhop in his late 40s, used psychokinetic powers to produce images on Polaroid instant film. Denver-based psychiatrist Jewel Eisenbud was alive from 1908 to 1999, died in 1999, wrote a book about Mr. Sirios titled The World of Ted Sirios, Thoughtographic Studies of an Extraordinary Mind. It was published in 1967, so you can get that book and read it if you want. Despite many in the scientific community attacking these people and the scientists who validated their claims, nobody has proven them frauds. There's lots of theories about this, and other people have claimed to be able to do this, but they have been proven fake. The two instances I'm giving you here, nobody's been able to disprove them. Photography has no connection with spiritualism or any form of spirit photography. So they're not taking pictures of ghosts. These are people who can make images on photographic plates and on instant Polaroid film with their minds. Okay, it's a completely different thing. One of the first books to mention psychic photography was published in 1896, written by Arthur Brunel Chatwood. And I did not write down the name of the book, darn it. Sorry. You can find it. It was published in 1896. The author is Arthur Brunel Chatwood. I forgot to write down the name of the book. I apologize. Anyway, now, for the skeptics, certainly it would be easy to fake a psychic photograph using such techniques as substitution, plate manipulation, double printing, double exposure, and chemical screens, things like that. But the two cases I mentioned above were thoroughly tested under laboratory conditions and with significant controls. The scientists who attacked them could not disprove their abilities. All they could do was hurl insults and accusations. They had no proof that these people were faking. As a matter of fact, this is where I heard about it. Ted Sirios was used as the basis for an episode of The X-Files. When they did The X-Files, if you're familiar with that, I did a TV series review on that. Great series. I wasn't a fan. I was a fanatic. I watched every episode. Whenever they did the plots for the different stories, they wanted them to be grounded in truth. So they had a basis in fact, even though the stories were fantastical. They had a basis in fact. Ted Sirios was used as the basis for an episode of one of these programs. Excuse me. When we discount what we think is impossible, we eliminate any possibility of growth. Imagination is a necessity for growth and for learning. Don't discount anything out of ignorance. That's my advice to you skeptics. Now, I'm not saying a healthy dose of skepticism is a bad thing, because it's not. You have to take a stand somewhere, or you fall for anything. But have an open mind, because you never know what's possible. This is the Dyatlov Pass incident. This particular story has intrigued me for years. In January of 1959, 9 student hikers embarked on a cross-country hike through the Ural Mountains of Russia. They were led by Igor Dyatlov, which is, I assume, is the name of the Dyatlov, why the Dyatlov Pass is named the Dyatlov Pass. It's by a mountain called the Dead Mountain. So take from that what you will. And there was actually another hiker, as I understand it, that there was actually 10 that started out, and one of them had a health issue and had to turn back. 10 days into the hike, the group reached a spot near a mountain that the locals call the Dead Mountain. In the middle of the night, for some unknown reason, the hikers cut their way out of their tent and fled down the mountain in sub-zero temperatures without their winter clothing or boots on, and in various stages of undress. Some of them were inebriated. When they were overdue, search parties were sent out. The hikers' bodies were found over a mile from the tent. They were found in several different locations with various injuries ranging from scratches to cuts and bruises to a fractured skull to broken ribs and even a missing tongue. The Soviet government closed the case and sealed the records, claiming that the hikers had frozen to death for reasons unknown. There are so many strange facts about this case that no one explanation seems to fit.
I just jotted a few down here. The official government report about the incident has 2 different dates attached to it. One on the cover and one on the report itself. One of these dates is for a week before the hikers were reported missing. This has given rise to many conspiracy theories of a government cover-up. And, it could very well have been a clerical error, but you never know. I'm by nature, I'm a paranoid man. I don't trust the government. I've seen them, what they do firsthand, so I do not trust them. There was a flashlight perched atop the tent, proving that there were other people at the scene prior to the search party finding the campsite. Several cameras were found, including multiple rolls of film. One picture taken on one roll of frame 34 shows an out-of-focus picture of a light in the sky. It is traveling very fast, and it is not a flare. Another question is, why did they exit the tent without warm clothes, jackets, or boots? Why did they cut their way out of the tent? If something's outside the tent, the last thing you want to do is get out of the tent. Whatever they were afraid of was in the tent with them. It may have been a fire. Maybe the tent caught fire. I don't know. Maybe they had a cooking stove there. That I want to say it was a homemade cooking stove for warmth or whatever. Maybe the thing caught fire. Who knows? But as I understand it, there was a picture of a guy earlier with his jacket on, and the jacket had been burned. It looked like it had been burned. So maybe that was it. Who knows? For whatever reason, these people abandoned their warm clothes, jackets, and boots and fled the tent. They cut their way out of the tent. That's just crazy. One member of the group was much older. He was 37. He was an outdoorsman and a soldier. He'd gotten awards for fighting in World War II. He needed one more expedition to qualify for an upgrade in his job as an instructor of tourism. The group seemed to get along well with him, so there was no issue there. One of the members of the group was horsing around and panhandling for money by singing songs in one of the local towns. He was arrested by the police. The rest of the group collectively, and this was before the hike started, or maybe it was early in the hike, I'm not sure. Again, multiple reports and they all say different things. The rest of the group collectively asked the policeman to let him go. This shows how good everyone got along and that they were good friends, because in the old Soviet Union, one did not interact with the police willingly. I know people, good friends of mine, if I got arrested, they would be like, well, we'll come visit you. They wouldn't have interacted with the police, especially there. Okay. Here we go. A 10th member of the group had to quit before the expedition started. I mentioned that earlier. 3 articles of clothing were found to be radioactive. I've heard reports that the radioactivity was very minor. It could have been heavy background radiation, and that some of these people worked in businesses and companies that did radioactive stuff, so that may have been explained, but we're not sure. Lights in the sky like UFOs were reported before, during, and after the incident from all around the area for several weeks. A blurred picture of a humanoid figure in the trees was found in the rolls of film. Many believe it is a picture of a Yeti. It could very well have been some of them horsing around, because obviously these people were jovial, they were having fun. It could have been one of them horsing around, we don't know. The picture's too blurry to really make anything out. But it is a humanoid figure in the woods. That's all we know. 2 members of a search team found the tent, but did not check inside. Then they did not report finding the tent for 2 days. That right there is suspect. If you're out in the cold, in the winter, in the woods, in the mountains, looking for somebody, you find a tent, but you don't look inside and you don't tell nobody for 2 days, something's up with that. These two members of the search team, they need to be investigated, if you ask me. Tracks indicate that they all walked together away from the tent and then diverged in different directions. So, if it was something outside the tent that scared them that badly, it had to have been on the opposite side of the tent. I don't know. That's just, it's crazy. Many people have put forth theories about what happened to the hikers and why they froze to death and why they fled the tent. I've listed 8 of them here. Aliens, a Yeti. Those are the 2 because of the pictures. That's the main thing there. Some people say there was an avalanche. There's no evidence of an avalanche in the area. People are talking about U.S. spies being in the area. They're talking about Russian military, either from a nearby deserted gulag, or maybe the Russian military was testing chemical weapons. If they're testing chemical weapons, that would explain that would give a possible theory as to why it drove them crazy and why they fled the tent like that. But even that's a stretch. Some people are saying there might have been a sexual conflict in the tent. Maybe there was a love triangle and one of them went crazy. I don't know. Some people are saying that local shamans drugged them. There are locals that live in the area, and the shamans are known to dally with roots and herbs and like that. So maybe one of the shamans got in there and drugged them and drove them all crazy. Who knows? Although in the here's the thing about that. It's hard to tell because of the autopsy, because the autopsy was not... It wasn't a normal autopsy. The government was involved. And if the government was covering it up, you can't trust the autopsy. You see what I'm saying? So we don't know what was in their system other than being inebriated. And not all of them were inebriated. So... Then there's the curse of the mountain, the dead mountain, which at this point makes as much sense as anything else. Now, none of these theories can be proved. None of them can be disproved. Right now, it's all wild speculation. For some reason, those 9 people cut themselves out of their own tent and fled. The official report stated that the cuts and bruises and scabbed over knuckles were the result of falling down. Have you ever caved in your chest, or you gotten your knuckles scabbed over from falling in snow? I haven't. I don't know about you, but I haven't. That's a bit of a stretch. I can see, you're trying to catch yourself, you land on your palms. Yeah, that would scratch up your palms. But your knuckles? That doesn't make any sense. Those are fighting injuries. Either offensive or defensive. I'm just saying, they're fighting injuries. When the government tried to bury the hikers hundreds of miles from their home, people objected. The funerals were finally held back at home, and the attendees were watched by the KGB. Multiple people reported that. 2 members of the team had violent impacts to their chests, which caused their deaths. Again, their chests were caved in, virtually. The wounds are virtually all consistent with violent acts like fighting and things like that. The government report says that they were forced out of the tent by an unknown compelling force. This was 1959 in the old Soviet Union. It seems to me, if the KGB was watching people at the funeral, it seems to me that the Russian government was as bad at covering stuff up as the American government is. So, I don't know. At this point, it looks like there was some sort of military involvement. It looks like something either approached from the opposite side of the tent where they fled from. They fled one direction, and from the opposite side, something was approaching that they were afraid of, or something was actually in the tent that they were afraid of. It's possible that they got a hold of some new chemical that the Russians were working on that drove them crazy. Who knows? Honestly, who knows? At this point, there's more questions than answers. But Korovina Group, Korovina, K-O-R-O-V-I-N-A, Korovina Group. I'm going to say Korovina, because I'm pretty sure that's how it's pronounced. My Russian isn't great, so bear with me. Okay, here we go. In August of 1993, a group of 9 hikers led by an experienced hiking teacher and leader of a hiking club named Lyudmila Korovina set out on a hike across an area of southern Siberia. The hikes tended to exhaust the students. Some of the parents feared that Korovina worked the students too hard and withheld food. The students loved the hikes. So, I don't know if it was that they just wanted to be tough or what, but they came back exhausted and they loved it. So obviously they're doing something they enjoy. So the parents let them do it. Now, it was scheduled and planned to be a medium difficulty hike. Unfortunately, the weather turned and became very cold with rain and snow. This was unexpected. There was also a thick fog, which was described as sticky. A sticky fog. That's weird. And here's some other disturbing reports that I found that were, I don't know, weird, I guess. Animals in the area were described as behaving oddly. Deer, bears, and birds were acting abnormally. Normally, if you're walking along a trail and you see a deer, the deer sees you, it runs away. That's normal. Or it'll watch you for a minute and then run away. These deer would stop and just stare as you walked by them. It was crazy. Bears and birds were acting abnormally as well. Trees in the area were leaning in odd ways. To me, that says some sort of a geomagnetic or a gravimetric anomaly of some kind. I don't know. Now, it is possible that electromagnetics can mess with people's minds. That's a possibility I hadn't considered. So, yeah, maybe. The team was scheduled to link up with another hiking team, but they failed to show. On the 5th day of the hike, all but one of the team had died mysteriously. The one survivor, her name is, let me see if I can find it, Valentina Udachenko. Valentina Udachenko. Anyway, this survivor reported that the group had pitched 2 tents and camped on the slope of the Krutyoy Pass. It was cold and it was heavy rain. Their tents had a lot of trouble in the bad weather with, tent ropes being pulled up and stakes being pulled up and like that. One of the tents collapsed and the sleeping bags got wet. There were no visible landmarks at 10 a.m. It was freezing cold. It was snowing. They tried to hike out, but one of the team kept falling. This is where it starts to get weird. Korovina stayed with him and ordered the others to go down. Excuse me, but then she almost immediately asked that someone return to her. The survivor returned while the others tried to set up a tent. The sick team member at that point was dead. He died quickly. He was walking along and kept falling. She said, "I'm going to stay with him. You guys go on ahead." So they took off a little bit, and she said, wait, come back. And he was dead already. Boom, that quick. His eyes were wide and indifferent, and he was frothing at the mouth. At that point, the survivor, Valentina Udachenko, tried to help another team member, but she got bitten. The team member bit her. She dragged the team member to the group, and another team member began banging her head on the rocks. Something was driving these people crazy, to the point of dying. Korovina wasn't breathing at that point, so even she died. The experienced one died. Valentina realized nobody was moving. She moved away for a bit, and she wrapped herself up in a tarp, made sure she was dressed good. She woke up the next day, the others were all dead. These people all went mad and died in a very short time. Valentina managed to survive in the wilderness. She discovered an abandoned transmission tower and followed the power lines where she found a deserted village. And then she got to the riverbank. There she was discovered by a group of hikers from Kiev. They helped her and took her to Slovakia. Slovakia, I guess? Now, nobody knows why the team members died. There are lots of theories, but no solid proof. The weather was certainly a factor, but that was not what killed them. If Udachenko is telling the truth, then this is a serious mystery.
The problem is that her stories do not match up with specifics of evidence. She said they died in 2 areas, but the bodies were all in one place. She said they used camp stoves, and then later said that they used fires. Udachenko was only 16. She was the youngest member of the team. Whatever happened to the team affected everyone except Udachenko. Was it something they ate? Was it something in the sticky fog? If they're all eating the same food, it should have affected her. The sticky fog should have affected everybody. The animals in the area were acting weird, but if they were affected by the fog, well, why wouldn't it affect Udachenko? You see? Korovina's daughter, now here's where it gets weird. Korovina's daughter, was paid a lot of money by the government not to investigate her mother's death. A sticky fog to me sounds a lot like a chemical weapon. If the government paid her a lot of money not to investigate, because in 92 the Soviet Union had fallen. They weren't the tyrannical old Soviet Union. So paying somebody not to investigate her mother's death, yeah, that sounds like some sort of a government cover-up to me. Was it a government weapons test? Maybe a chemical weapon? Who knows? Was it poison food? But why didn't it affect Udachenko? The autopsies indicated signs of starvation. But Udachenko claims they ate over 2,000 calories a day and snacked at every rest break. There was no reason for them to have suffered from starvation. This incident has many similarities to the Dyatlov Pass incident from 1959. Are there naturally occurring toxic gases in the area? If so, why did it not affect Udachenko? Again, there are too many unanswered questions in this case, and none of it makes any sense. Anything that would have affected the rest of the group should have affected her. Was there something the rest of the group was doing that she wasn't partaking in? Maybe the rest of the group was getting drunk in the evenings, drinking vodka or something, and they didn't share with the little kid. That's the only thing I can think of. Was it something in the vodka? I don't know. Again, it's like the Dyatlov Pass incident. There's too many unanswered questions. You cannot make sense of it. These people were fine. In the space of maybe early morning to noon time area, in the space of 12 hours, the rest of that team all went crazy and died, frothing at the mouth and banging their heads on rocks. What the hell? And it didn't affect the 16-year-old kid, but it affected everybody else. An incident that can only be explained as a time traveler. Now, I've done videos on time travel. I think they're in my Technopho playlist. So, and I've also done videos on interdimensional travelers. Go check them out. Unexplained phenomena, that kind of thing. People have seen things that they can't explain, and they've taken photographs of things that seem futuristic, later on seem to be of things that haven't been invented yet. There is, of course, no way to prove any of these because it's either hearsay or there's no way to verify what is, in fact, in the photos. Finding documented proof of things that are in the wrong time is exceedingly rare. I've done videos on unexplained artifacts, things like that. Go check those out. But this is something completely different. This is in modern time, and this is just weird. Again, the proof of this is exceedingly rare. Enter Sergei Ponomarenko. I hope I'm saying his name right. In 2006 in Kiev, Ukraine, Sergei was found, Ponomarenko was found by police. He was a young man in his mid-20s, dressed in old-style clothes. He was confused and seemed to be lost. He was carrying a camera, and it was an old-style camera that was in light new condition. His ID was from the old Soviet Union. It listed his birth year as 1932. The police asked him what the date was, and he said that he thought it was April 23rd, 1958. The police, of course, sent him to a mental hospital.
Once there, Dr. Pablo Kutrikov indulged his fantasy and questioned him. Sergei said he'd went for a walk in the city of Kiev and saw a strange bell-shaped object in the sky. It flew in a strange way. He was able to take a photograph of the object with his camera. A photography expert found that the camera was an old-style Yoshimo Flex, a very rare camera, but it was like new. Really good condition, like new. The film in the camera was produced in 1956. The photos were of Kiev in the 1950s and showed buildings that no longer existed, things like that. Sergei was in many of the photos along with his girlfriend. The UFO was in one of the photos, the bell-shaped UFO. Sergei disappeared from his room at the hospital that night. There was a guard and he could not have gotten out the window. He just literally disappeared. They put him in a room. There was a guard outside. He never left the room, and they went in and checked. He's gone. Boom. Police were able to contact the girl in the photos, his girlfriend. She was in her 70s. She said that he did disappear for a day in 1958, but that he returned. Later, he disappeared again in 1970, this time for good. She received a photo in the mail from him much later, and he was older, and he was in Kiev. The date on the photo was 2050. This is a documented story with physical proof. The camera was left at the mental hospital in 2006. This event did, in fact, happen. The film exists, the pictures exist, the camera exists. The girlfriend has the photo that was mailed to her. All that stuff is real. It does, in fact, exist. Now, this event did, in fact, happen. So, now we're going to go into some of my wild speculation. I've done videos on this. In World War II, the Nazis were experimenting with wild new technologies for their wonder weapons programs. They were working on gravimetric and magnetic drive systems and all manner of science fiction stuff. One of their secret projects was TheGrumpyOldFart, the bell. I've done a video on this as well as the Black Forest UFO sighting crash. Go check those videos out. TheGrumpyOldFart came up missing. It may have resurfaced in Pennsylvania decades later, but we're not sure. TheGrumpyOldFart was a bell-shaped craft like the one Sergei photographed. What if the Nazis escaped with TheGrumpyOldFart and jumped into the future? What if they jumped to 1958 and somehow Sergei Ponomarenko was sucked into some kind of time slip and was deposited temporarily in 2006? Then he was sucked in again in 1970 and deposited in 2050. Maybe the Nazis were just jumping around in this thing. Who knows? I know this is a crazy theory, but look at the facts. Sergei Ponomarenko did in fact leave a camera and a mystery in 2006. That event did happen. There was a photo of a bell-shaped craft in the film. His girlfriend got a photo in the mail from him, of him, as an old man in Kiev, and it was dated in 2050. That photo does, in fact, exist. We know the Nazis were developing this TheGrumpyOldFart craft. We know it disappeared. That's in the official records. Later on, I want to say it was in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, if I'm not mistaken, but don't quote me. Another bell-shaped craft appeared and the U.S. government took it. Now, was it the same craft? I don't know. But if it was, that means that the Nazis either intentionally or accidentally discovered time travel. And if that's the case, he took a picture of a bell-shaped object. That's not in question. You link some of this stuff together and you're like, holy crap, maybe. I don't know. Again, I'm not saying this is what happened. But look at the facts. If anybody else has another explanation, please let me know. And you can't say crazy because there's physical evidence. We have the camera. They have the camera. They have the photographs, the film.
The woman, the girlfriend, got the photo in the mail. She's got the photo. It's real. There's a photo on his camera of a bell-shaped craft